Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Al Graf. Al Graf represents Suffolk County in the New York State Assembly, the 5th Assembly District. We want to thank you folks all across Long Island for joining us for our program today. Al Graf, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You have been so busy since the last time you and I have had a chance to chat. You've been traveling around the state, looking into this crisis of heroin usage that is just overtaking New York State very rapidly. We're going to be talking about that in our program today. We've got some budget news, though, to report, too. Well, we're still kind of getting the sense of what all is the outcome of this 2016-2017 New York State budget. As always, there's some good, there's some bad, depending upon who you talk to. But I know you're pretty excited about some of the impact on your local school districts.
Well, what happened is we were able to get more money into education. So the money that we got into education by eliminating the gap elimination adjustment. So if you look at Sachem School District, that was really in a hole. There was really a financial problem there. We wound up getting over $9 million back into that school system. So, you know, for the benefit of the kids in the school and other school districts, we got money as well. So it's been a fight. You know, we're still trying to roll back some of the bad policies that the state put in. And it's like if you're playing tug of war, it's inch by inch that, you know, we're pulling the other side across the finish line so that we can afford to, you know, give our kids the best education possible based on their individual needs. And like one of the big problems we're tackling also this year is diplomas, because if you pass 5 regions, you get a Regents diploma. If you pass 3 regions, you get a local diploma. But if you can't pass 3 regions, they give you a certificate. And these certificates are useless. I mean, you can't get into the military with it. If you want to go into the trades, you can't get into a trades program with a certificate. Again, New York State, we're fighting, we're pushing, we're trying to do what we can to make sure that all of our kids can succeed later on in life.
It's like you and I know, and the people watching this program know, you have to, it's that idea of a global economy, and the United States children, and New York State in particular, in the case we're talking about, need to be able to succeed against all the other kids that are graduating and going to school out there. And it's almost as if the New York State education bureaucracy just doesn't get that.
Well, it's not only the bureaucracy. The governor has a lot of say for some reason. I'm happy now because the new regent, Rosa, is pushing back. And she's in a lot of places where I am, okay? But we're going to have to send her some other stuff to look at. And hopefully we can put this back into the hands of the local school districts. Because to be honest with you, once New York State got involved in education, they screwed everything up. You know, it's the old saying, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Yeah. You know, when they say that, you have to worry.
This is the new commissioner who said that if she was a parent with kids at that age, she would have them opt out.
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you, this has been a mommy-led movement. I mean, these parents are saying, you're not going to hurt my children anymore. And the opt-out movement in New York, all right, is sending a strong message to Albany to say, knock it off. So, but Albany's slow to respond. Ed Rahr and I are hitting them over the head. We've sat there in every regent's interview and everything else. We've made changes to education. You know, it's not as fast as I want it to be, right. But Ed and I are never short of beating the bushes and trying to get them to understand that what they're doing is wrong.
And I think the parents are being heard here in Albany, because I've noticed that some of the other colleagues of yours in the legislature are commenting on it and understanding that there is a problem. That means that they're listening to somebody. It's got to be the parents.
Well, there's a lot of people in the legislature they're just a little thick. So it takes time to get them to understand certain concepts.
All right, we don't need to name names, though, or anything, all right?
Well, I wouldn't say Cuomo, but, you know, but he's one, you know. But, you know, that's an important issue. The other important issue is heroin. I've been traveling around the state. We've been talking to people. We went from Long Island to Plattsburgh, from Albany out to Buffalo. And we've talked to so many people, and this is such a problem throughout our state. It's not only a problem throughout our state, it's a problem on a federal level, too, because you hear the candidates on the federal level starting to talk about heroin. And what's surprising is Joe Giglio and I, he's another assemblyman, we went out to talk to people to find out what was going on, and we came out with a heroin report that made a lot of recommendations. And basically what we've done is we've earmarked the problems and what we're not doing right in order to effectively combat this heroin epidemic. I mean, to the point where after our report came out, a lot of it's being implemented right now on an administrative level. So the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, right, has been implementing a lot of things we've done. I see other legislation that mirror the legislation that we've put in that is, I'm hoping, is going to come to the floor of the Assembly. And one of the things we did is we put in, parents have no place to turn when their child's an addict, and or family members have no place to turn if their loved one is a substance abuser. So we actually wrote legislation which is pretty comprehensive. It's brand new, and it deals with the ability of a parent to go into court if their loved one cannot function in the world because of their addiction, and they can actually petition the court to force their loved one into rehab. Some people say you can't force somebody into rehab, but what I would point out is if we put a hold on them and put them through detox, which takes 10 days, and how they describe it is picture the worst flu you've ever had in your life, multiply it by 100, and understand that you feel pain to the marrow of your bones. So if we have you in there and you've gone through that, I think that's when you're most susceptible to wanting help for your addiction. And I think we're pretty much on target because we actually had representatives for the Queen of Sweden call us up, okay, and wanted to talk to us and see what we learned, because they have programs all around the world.
Interesting.
And they've taken a look at our report, and you know, I think it's pretty comprehensive.
Let me take you back to that tour that you and Assemblyman Giglio took around the state. One of the things that struck me as I heard more and more about your outing in all the different places you went were the crowds that you were drawing and the people that were so passionate. Because, as you pointed out, they want to take care of those people, their loved ones, that are hooked on heroin.
Yep.
Let me show a little bit of what you said at one of those task force hearings, and then we'll be able to talk more about them when we return with more. Today's Assembly Calendar.
The addict of today isn't that person in the city in a alley with a needle stuck in his arm. That was the picture of the addicts. The addicts today are our children, our nieces, our nephews. They're our friends' kids, our neighbors' kids. All right, they come from all walks of life. So this is really a problem throughout the state and beyond just the state, because it's even bled into the national politics. So we're trying to, every time we do a forum, it reinforces some of the things that we have identified already and reinforces what we're looking at. But at the same time, every time we do a forum, something new comes out, something different, and we have to focus our attention on a new issue that's related to this.
We're back here now talking live with Al Graf while we continue to look at some of the pictures from the heroin task forces that took place all across New York State. You can see people interacting with the legislators who were sitting at the panel. There you must have been in Broome County and Binghamton. I mean, you didn't leave a stone unturned as you were traveling around.
People crying out for help. And if you look at one individual, there were 3 young men that testified in front of us, and one actually, since we did the forums, actually passed away from an overdose. And parents is crying for help. So, I mean, that was the whole purpose of the report, is we gave a roadmap on how to deal with this and how to handle this epidemic, right? We've taken a entire view of how we're doing it, and basically we're not doing it the right way.
And I see members of the law enforcement community testifying as well.
Right. I'm an ex-police officer. I'm a retired police officer. And most of the cops out there, and Joe is ex-law enforcement, so you would think we'd say lock everybody up. But we know that's not the answer. And most of the police that we talked to, it was the same thing. We cannot arrest our way out of this. Right. Okay? We need to do something different. So that was the idea behind the report, and I think we had a clip here.
We do.
From when we did we did a press conference when we finally rolled the report out. It took 6 months to put that report in place.
And then the legislation, too. So let's take a look at a brief comment from Assemblyman Al Graf at the press conference releasing the report on the findings of the heroin task force.
If you look at some of the things that's going on, Medicaid reimbursement, okay, is so low that many of the detox centers have closed up. Many of the hospitals have closed their detox centers. Insurance companies are paying for 3 days of detox. Think about that. What we've heard over and over again, it takes you at least 7 days to withdraw from heroin. And how they describe it is, picture the worst flu you've ever had in your life. Multiply that by 100 and understand that you feel pain to the marrow of your bones. And the second you shoot up, all of that goes away. So we know that if it takes 7 days to withdraw from heroin, and the insurance companies are paying for 3, they are turning around, kicking the person out of the hospital at the height of their withdrawal. What do you think is going to happen?
You know, I'm guilty of this myself, but when I heard that you and your colleagues were going out on a heroin task force, I said, heroin? What, is it the 1970s? And come to find out that there's like a resurgence in usage.
I've been pushing this for over a year, and then I talked to, the assembly into letting me go out there with Joe Giglio, because we knew this was a problem over a year ago. So we went out there and we tried to narrow it, and, nail it down and everything. But, what was funny is one of the insurance companies, when I was there and we were talking about the detoxes and everything, they jumped up and said, oh yeah, put it on the backs of the insurance companies. And I looked at him and my response was, wait a minute. He goes, how about personal responsibility? And I said, yeah, let's talk about that. You're paying for multiple ambulance rides. You're paying for multiple ER visits. You're paying for multiple detoxes. You're paying for multiple rehabs, okay? And now the insurance companies, you have to fail out of 3 outpatients before you're allowed to go inpatient. That's costing a lot of lives. And I looked at the insurance guy and I said, let me ask you, wouldn't it be cheaper to do it right the first time? So the way we're handling it is, they treat detox separate from rehab, separate from aftercare, okay? And they go hand in hand. And you have to transfer the person from detox to rehab, from rehab to aftercare. You have to come up with an individualized care plan for this person so they're successful. You have to make sure it's followed. Then you have to come up with an individualized aftercare program for this individual and monitor them and help them and give them support. And then you have to move them to aftercare. And in aftercare, you have to give them an opportunity to get their GED, to get their maybe college credits, to get some type of job training, because you can clean them up, but if they can't make a living, they're going right back to where they were.
I've got 30 seconds.
All right.
Do you think that this legislature gets it in the final few weeks of this legislative session, that you'll see some kind of legislation on this issue?
I think we'll see some legislation, but it's another thing where it's a tug of war, and we're going to pull them across the line inch by inch. Like I told you, Albany, a lot of people in Albany are pretty thick-headed, so we're trying to break through that, put a little beam of light in their brains here to say, this is how you handle this, okay? But, it's hard in Albany, so, we fight the battles we can fight. And we have our successes, and it's not as quickly as I'd like it to be.
We'll be watching on this particular one to see what kind of progress Al Graf makes. We thank Al Graf for joining us today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, too, for spending your time. We'll hope to see you soon for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.